Hey everyone. Today's interview is about innovation. It's about breakthrough therapies. You guys have been seeing it in the news recently. So if you're in medical affairs, if you are in sales, if you are looking at, for example, the BBC, and you're looking at Nature, and you're hearing about the first pig to human heart transplant, this is the conversation for you because I am super excited to hear about it. Today's guest is the VP of Digital Innovation at United Therapeutics. He is. I'm going to read a little bit more about him. He's worked for UT for 22 years, 18 years as CIO, and 3 years in digital innovation. He's a visionary. Our guest for today is Shola Oyewole. And Shola, how badly did I butcher that again? Because I do this every time.
It was perfect.
No way. I'll take it. Not even close. But I will take it. Okay, do it right first. Before I continue, do it right.
Shola Oyewole.
Oyewole. Okay. This is Darshan Talks live stream. I'm your host, Darshan Kulkarni. I'm an attorney. I'm a pharmacist, and I advise companies with FDA-regulated products. I do have to say I'm an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. I'm a pharmacist. I'm not your pharmacist. So this is neither legal advice nor clinical advice, and it's not innovation advice either. These are just conversations. These are considerations, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host, the guest, or our employers or clients. If you like what you hear, please leave a message. Please comment. Please subscribe. Please share. Please reach out to our guest. Ask questions. I know he would love to hear from you. I know I would as well. You can always find me on Twitter at Darshan Talks. Just go to our website at darshantalks.com. You can actually reach Shola via his email at shola@unither.com. Shola, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. As always, I'm admiring the background, which looks incredibly fake because it's so beautiful until you told me that it's actually real. So I'm always thrown off by that. I love the art pieces in the background. It's one of the things about Zoom for me has been seeing how people decorate their own surroundings, and your surrounding is just plain beautiful. I love the mid-century modern furniture. Just overall awesome. So let's start with the beginning. How has the last couple of weeks been for you? What have there been big changes?
Well, as you know, the beginning of a new year means new projects. The ending of a previous year also means closing other projects. So I would say the beginning of my year includes the ending of last year. I ran an innovation event a couple of years ago, and we had two great ideas. Both one ended up being a business, which we finally launched end of last year. So I was helping close that up. The second is enter the second phase, which is R&D. So I helped close up the first year. We're working on budgeting the R&D for this year. In addition to those two ideas that came out of the innovation event, for the past few months, I've been evaluating a platform. Think of it as a healthcare practitioner for LinkedIn, HCP for LinkedIn. The purpose of which is to help the users of this platform familiarize themselves much better with healthcare practitioners. As you would appreciate, if you were going to reach out to a doctor, it would be helpful if you knew what the doctor was interested in through their publications, their affiliations, and generally their past prescribing habits. As a salesperson or as a detailer, you don't want to walk into a doctor's office blind. You want to know enough of their interests. The purpose of this platform is to help collect and collect information from various data sources, PubMed, clinicaltrials.gov, Sunshine Act, etc., to provide this very, very, very useful view of the one doctor. Think of it as, again, like, LinkedIn for doctors. So I've been trialing that product now for the last 3 months, showing it to various business groups in the company, medical affairs, the commercial team, um, and folks like that to have them weigh in on it, including the marketing department. That's kept me very busy because we're at the end of the evaluation period.
So it's interesting you talk about that because I'm fascinated in that third topic, and we're going to delve into that a little bit more. I can get into the first two as well, but let's start with the third topic this second. You talk about how this LinkedIn for healthcare practitioners is going to collate and collect information. Do you find that the value is going to be um, in how UT is going to be able to understand the information, or will it actually add value to the healthcare practitioners themselves?
Well, so the beauty of the definition of a platform is it benefits both ends because the platform is a two-sided. Um, it's a two-sided idea. The end users are on one end getting value from data and information in the platform. The folks on the platform themselves are getting better utility. I'd rather, if I was a doctor and somebody wanted to detail me, I'd rather you had access to all my prescribing habits and my interests before you pick up the phone to call me. You know, if my specialty is in heart, but you're looking for a doctor that's a specialty in lungs, and you call me, that's a waste of your time. That's a waste of my time,
Yeah.
right? And I'd rather you call me and refer to my publications, my partnerships, my affiliations with hospitals. That way, our conversation can be more useful. So, from both ends of the platform, there's a benefit for both the consumer and the folks that already exist in the platform.
So you're not seeing this as a CRM, as a customer relationship management tool. You're seeing it almost as a network. When you said platform, you really mean a network where people can engage and interact with each other?
That's a very good question. It does tie in with the CRM.
Okay,
In the CRM, you track your interactions with the doctors.
right,
But this platform, think of it as LinkedIn for doctors, right? You look for the doctors you're interested in. Most of them don't already exist in your CRM because you don't know the doctors yet. But you might
right.
be interested in a certain therapy area or a certain geographic area. You start your search in those areas, and wherever you find doctors that you're interested in, right? You link them to your CRM software. And as you interact with the doctors, right, you begin to track that in your CRM software. So it isn't CRM per se, but there's a plugin where you can connect the doctors you find on this platform to records on your CRM.
And what has your feedback been so far? How has your sales teams or your medical affairs teams seen this? What value do you find? Do they find? What are the considerations they're thinking? Maybe this is a nice tip or tool to add in there.
So far, I've gotten very positive responses because one of our drugs has been approved for a new disease indication of which there's no other drug. And this platform can help us explore what doctors are treating that disease because they become potentials, you know, people we can speak to and say, well, there's this drug that's been approved for this disease you are managing, or for the progression of this disease you're managing. Perhaps you might want to look at some papers, white papers about this. So, in that sense, it helps familiarize us with the new market that we're not familiar with yet.
So do you see this as like a top of the funnel sort of process where you can at least identify who's impacted before you start narrowing down to who wants to engage? So do you see this as building your funnel, if you will, your marketing funnel?
That would be a very good descriptor, correct? Because it's a huge market out there, and
Yeah,
you want to whittle it down to those that will find value from your product.
very, very interesting. Has To a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I have to ask, how did legal take it?
In what way it is
In
publicly?
general, for example, did they go, oh, you know what, I have privacy considerations? Or did they go, oh, this works great, but we need to have certain contracts in place? Like, were there any thoughts behind all of that?
Well, so remember, this platform is gathering information for publicly accessible information. There's nothing proprietary about it. The proprietariness of this platform is the nature in which they collate the information. But all the information about these doctors are publicly available. PubMed.gov, clinicaltrials.gov. But they use it in such a smart way to connect a doctor with their habits.
Right.
Publications that they have, that's public information. Clinical trials they participated in, that's public information. We don't enter as end users, we don't enter any proprietary information into the system. We consume it as a read-only system, and we only take that which we need to add it to our CRM. Just like you would LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn, there's nothing I can do to update Darshan Kulkarni's profile or anything. I can make comments, but that's about it. I can't change your Pharma D to Pharma E or Pharma F. No, it's
Sure.
read only. But I can capture your information, add it to my CRM, and manipulate it the way I want to, right? But you are always going to be Dasha, called Cameron Pharma D Esquire until you want to be something else. That remains in that domain.
But do you find, for example, a simple thing you consider is the sources you're downloading it from? Are they okay? Like, have you looked at the terms and conditions? Has legal considered that in terms of, are they okay with that data being used in that way? For example, as I'm sure you know, Facebook is notorious for saying you can't use our data in the way in other ways. You have to use it in the ways we allow you to use them. So each platform, I don't know which platform you're using. I expect CT.gov is probably a little bit more accepting of what data you use and from where. There might be other platforms, for example, if you were pulling up from Twitter or Facebook, they might be a little bit less accepting. So did you work this, or did you work it in conjunction with legal and go, make sure these are okay? Or is this still in a proof of concept stage and you just haven't had a need to go down that path yet?
Our terms of our agreement with the vendor allows us to use it in that way.
Okay, got it. Fair enough. So there was an engagement and that discussion was had and all those good things. Very interesting. Uh, do you have you had any user testing from a physician perspective yet, or healthcare practitioner perspective?
No, because they will not be the users of the system. It'll be,
Got it.
we are the consumers of the information. Their information just happens to be in there. But if you're saying, have we validated the information from the portal against live physicians? Well, remember the portal is relying on publicly accessible databases, some of which have errors. So there are
Absolutely.
instances where a physician may be given credit for a publication she never co-wrote. So in such instances, wherever you see discrepancy, the tool allows you to submit a query about it, and then they do a manual check and correct it in the back end. Um, from what I have gathered so far, that is not a big enough problem, because today, what do you have versus a platform that gives you as much information as possible? And usually, because you're so as a pharmaceutical rep, you are so adept at what you're doing. You're so familiar with the market. You can tell where the discrepancies. You can tell that, wait a minute, she is known as a specialist in, lung diseases.
Sure.
How come she co-wrote a paper on eye disease? It
Right.
doesn't sound very logical. And plus, the people she co-wrote the paper on eye disease are specialists in, So there are ways you can take a look at data, take a look at information, and instinctively vet it. And
Yeah.
wherever you're in doubt within the platform, you click a link, you say, please validate this, and within a quick turnaround time, they come out to you with the results to say, yeah, in fact, there is a link between lung and eye disease, and yes, she did co-write this paper. So I'm just making up that scenario, but I'm just trying to explain that the data is not super accurate, but there are mitigation efforts to ensure that it is as accurate as possible.
The reason I ask the question is um, I've worked with several physicians who have I've raised similar concepts before, and one of the things they always talk about is I didn't know you guys being pharma has so much data on me, and that worries them and that scares them. So I didn't know from a transparency standpoint, is that a conversation that is had with them, or do you go, this information is out there, people already know this information. I'm not worried about scaring my stakeholders like physicians because they already know that this information is out there. So I didn't know what your take was on that, and that's where that question came from.
Oh no, physicians know that all this information is out there. It has to be. I mean, they prescribe, they participate in clinical trials. All that information, is captured. There's, I don't know that there's anything that's confidential. Now, some of them may have Twitter feeds that they use for personal tweeting that might also they may also use for business tweeting, and in such cases, the tweets are scrubbed to just focus on the medical practice. Like if they're going to tweet about their family vacation, that's not going to be included in this database. But if they're going to tweet about their responses to a study, to a drug, to a therapy, that will be included in their social interaction within this platform.
So let's ask that question. Why would you scrub that? If that information is happening, I'm a sales rep who's going to go in. It's a waste of my time to go in to see a doctor whose Twitter feed already tells me he's on vacation somewhere. So why scrub that data up front? Or is that a privacy issue? And you're like, I would rather the sales rep go in and not deal with it.
But if I'm going to detail you about a certain therapy and all, I don't know that it is relevant that I knew you just had a taco sandwich or you went skiing in Denver. I mean, it would be a nice conversation piece to say, hey, but I don't, it sounds so, your time is valuable. I think your focus is listen, what studies are out there? What publications do I need to be studying? What should I be reading?
Right.
I don't need that small talk about you talking about my, choice of taco or where I skied last week. And I'll be like, wait a minute, did I tweet that?
Right.
Don't want the world to know that. So I think we try to keep it as very business focused on the therapy area as much as possible. But all that is scrubbed out by the provider of the platform.
It sounds absolutely fascinating. Speaking about finding physicians who are doing novel things, find people like you who are leading the charge for innovation. One of the pieces of information that came across my desk that you are no doubt familiar with is this bit of information: the first pig to human heart transplant. Um, could you tell us a little bit more about why this is relevant to the conversation we're having with you?
Well, United Therapeutics, our focus today is to manufacture organs, transplantable organs globally. We'd like to help end people waiting in line, dying waiting in line as they wait for a donor organ. Because sadly, for you to get an organ, you have to wait for somebody else to die. That I don't think is anything anybody enjoys thinking about. So we focused in the last decade or so on how do we manufacture organs so that people can get the organ they need at that point of need. This article tells you how very recently one of our genetically modified pigs or hearts was successfully transplanted into a patient. who was ineligible for an organ transplant. Because as you know, transplants today are based on donors giving up parts of their bodies for you to live. And there are lots of people, lots of patients dying on a daily basis as they just wait for organs. So United Therapeutics, our main focus today has been how do we manufacture an unlimited supply of organs to end the death while waiting for an organ.
I'll be honest. It's an area that's very close to my heart because I don't mean literally, not close to my literal heart, but figuratively because I've had multiple family members pass away because of liver issues, and it's one of those things that I care about very deeply. One of the things I read in here is that the first step with xenotransplantation being a transplantation from an animal into a human. So the first step was knocking out several genes that caused rejection. The second step is potentially expanding from the heart to other organs. Obviously, there are multiple trials that are going on. Obviously, a lot of it is still in play. Obviously, this is not legal advice and or clinical advice. But can you talk a little bit, to the extent you know, about the steps being taken to expand the program, to bring hope to so many more people? I can tell you, for me personally, um, this announcement gave me hope, and I mean that at a personal level. So it's really interesting to know that this is happening. So can you talk a little bit more about the expansion of the program, and if there's going to be an opportunity, for example, for you, for example, through digital innovation to help enhance it?
So the program itself, we are working on xeno kidneys, xeno hearts, and xeno lungs. Okay. Um, a few months ago, one of our xeno kidneys was actually used in a patient. Um, and it was transplanted into her, and it worked as intended. The parents had donated her body to this study, and that was sometime in September, I believe, last year. Okay, so this our program itself comprises those three organs primarily: the kidneys, the organs, and the lungs. For the lungs, we actually do have a facility where we're 3D printing
Oh,
lungs that can be transplanted into humans. Um, the manufacturing of organ is this company's main focus. But as you would appreciate, everything is digitalized. I mean, 3D printing is about digital, all right? Inserting and extracting genes, that's also digitalized. But we have very brilliant scientists, very brilliant teams that do this thing on a daily basis. They're the experts. I hardly know exactly what they do.
well, that's what you get for hiring people who are so smart. They change things that even if you were an expert, you'd be blown away by some of the stuff they do. So it's impressive. It's amazing. And what I find really interesting is that nowhere in these articles is UT mentioned, which to me speaks to how everyone talks about what the physicians are doing. And don't get me wrong, the physicians deserve so much credit for the transplant, but no one's talking about the goodwill associated with the company that's causing this to happen. And I think that is so amazing, so incredible. I don't normally say these things about a company because I think everyone's just doing their job and doing a good job with it. But to me, this affects me personally, so I'm just fascinated. What I guess my question is, so why do you think that the heart got so much more interest than the kidney? When you said the kidney happened a few months ago.
I am not sure why one would differ from the other. I guess in the case of the heart, the patient was somebody that needed a heart to live.
Hmm.
In the case of the kidney, this was a patient that unfortunately had suffered brain death, and her body had been donated towards science.
Okay. Okay.
And even though the kidney functioned as it should, it is just a kind of different scenario, I believe,
Yeah,
you know.
that
And
makes sense.
yes,
So the next step, which you said hopefully will happen, and again, you're not making any promises. You're not speaking for the company in any way, but is a 3D printed lung, and I
3D,
think that would be
yeah,
fascinating.
yes, 3D printed lungs, lungs also grown from genetically modified pigs. And also, our regenerative sciences department is working on decellularizing the cells off of pig lungs and then recellularizing them with human stem cells to make them human. That is another method we're using to manufacture lungs. So we're working earnestly on these therapies because organ manufacturing is something that our focus is on at
It's
United.
it's living in the future, as they say. One of my questions that comes with it, I don't know if you know the answer to this question because it is quite honestly outside your core area of focus. But do you know if they're being regulated as devices, or I would imagine it has to be a device because it's not a drug, but I don't know.
Actually, the Xeno heart is regulated as a drug.
Really interesting.
I don't know the reasons behind that. I would just assume if you use the word device, a device would be like this, and it is rated to act the same way all the time. It's a cup, okay? Its job is to hold liquids at a certain temperature all the time. For a device, you can rate that. But mind you, this is a biologic,
Right.
okay, that may act differently in your body versus my body. So, in that sense, maybe that is why it is not called a device.
So it's not a device. Maybe it's a biologic. Maybe under CBER instead of CDER. Again, don't know. But yeah,
Maybe this is outside my scope of knowledge.
totally understandable. Totally understandable. To a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I'm 100% behind you. This was, as always, an incredibly fascinating conversation. We're well past time. As you know, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions just to sort of walk us out. But the first question: what would you like to ask the audience?
I wasn't ready for that. I guess my request for the audience is to do some more research in this area. If you could share them the link to this
Absolutely.
miracle, it'd be we're happy for the gentleman that got this surgery. It was such a happy new year for him. We hope we can help more patients as time goes. So thank
Another bit, another piece that most people may not realize that I didn't realize until you mentioned it to me was it's not just about the first pig to human heart, but United Therapeutics UT was also responsible for Dolly the sheep, which which is fascinating to me.
That's correct. Revivico had worked on the clothing of this sheep many, many, many years ago. I would
Do we
say
know if the sheep led? I didn't follow the story. Do you know if it led a successful life the whole way through, or was it sort of? Again, don't know. I'm not sure you necessarily followed it either, but just
no.
fascinated. Okay, me,
I
me
have
neither.
no idea. We're gonna have to check Twitter for that. The sheep might have a Twitter handle.
The sheep have a Twitter handle. We should probably check the sheep's Twitter handle. I agree, but such great news. Let me ask you another question, which is we've been saying this throughout, but what's the best way for people to reach you?
I can be reached by my email, shola@unither.com, or on LinkedIn. Same name,
There you go.
Shola Oyewole.
And let me show his name. Shola, Shola Oyewole. That's how you can find him on LinkedIn as well. And I'm going to ask one last question for you, which is what's something that you learned in the last month?
What did I learn in the last month? Oh, what I learned in the last month. That's easy. That xenotransplantation is the future of organ manufacturing.
I think is definitely part of the future. This was amazing. Thank you so much for being part of this. Shola, it was a pleasure as always. Can't wait to have you back.
It was an honor. Thank you, Darshan. Talk to
Take
you
care.
soon. Cheers.
Cheers.